And welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Thank you for spending some time with us today. Jack Weinberger, Paul Farrington. Remember, please like, comment, subscribe before doing anything else. But Jack, mid-majors are underway. We stormed the court in Teaneck, New Jersey the other night as our Fairleigh Dickinson Knights punched their ticket. It's one of the best times of the year to be a sports fan. We've always said that.
Paul, it is the best time of the year to be a sports fan. The best weeks of the year underway. Like you said, our Knights back in the dance. Let's knock off one this time. Kennesaw State, 1 win last year, back in the NCAA, or in the NCAA Tournament, first time ever. The FDU, 4 wins last year in the tournament, first time ever. South Alabama, the 8 seed, looking to punch their ticket as we speak. Power 5 starting tomorrow. Let's get it rolling.
A lot to be excited about, but we are so excited, most of all, to bring in host of the Morning After on Sports Grid Network, a Syracuse Orangeman, and the newly cuffed Ben Stevens.
Big Ten Ben.
Gentlemen,
Ben.
that is quite a welcome. To be here on the Paul Farrington Show is an absolute pleasure and an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you very much for having me. The man that sits to your left, Paul Farrington, is a man that I have known since he was an intern at the Sports Grid Network, Jack Weinberger, who would give me ridiculous things over summer months when I would head in for In-Game Live, one of the shows we did over the weekend. And he'd be like, Ben, it's Pirates fireworks night tonight in Pittsburgh at PNC. They're going to win. I'm like, Jack, they're a 2.5 run line underdog right now. They're getting 2.5 runs on the run line. It's plus 245 against Garrett Cole and the Yankees. Not a chance are the Pirates going to win this interleague matchup. And sure enough, because it was fireworks night on a Saturday in Pittsburgh, Jack Weinberger hit. So we started calling it the Jack Cap. And the man you see to your left, sunglasses and all, I think is an iteration of what started at Sports Grid.
Yeah, I can't believe that you guys let him come on all the time and give the caps, but they started to hit, didn't they?
Hey, if it hits, you keep rolling. If it hits, you keep rolling.
100%. Paul, I don't know if you've ever heard this story. And just a quick aside here before we dive in
please.
to conference tournament action. At the end of, what would it have been, 2021, it was December 31st, and we had a show on New Year's Eve day. It was a big college football playoff preview show. It was a 3-hour show at the time. So for the end of the second hour, that like 2.5-minute segment, Jack was in studio, and I was like, you've been giving a Jack Cap all year long for a college football game on Saturday. Here we are at the college football playoff. Let's do a Jack Cap live in studio when we had a 2-camera operation. So Jack got up there like 15 minutes before his hit time. He's sitting next to me as I'm like doing another segment, interviewing a guest. I can see him to the right, just like shaking, getting ready to go. He's repeating his words that he had scripted out, like to himself, rehearsing, practicing everything that he had to hit during his Jack Cap. And I told him, I was like, listen, I will toss it to you probably. I'll welcome us back from break. It's like 2 minutes and 45 seconds overall in this segment. I'm going to be quick. I'm going to let you shine. This is your 2.5-minute monologue, whatever you want to do. And my man used all parts of 2.5 minutes, hitting every point that he needed to a T. It was fantastic. But I'll never forget Jack Weinberger sitting next to me, like 3 feet away to my right, as I'm like hosting a national television show. And he's like practicing and like shaking and making sure he is ready to go. A nervous wreck, but he delivered when the absolute time needed to be done.
I remember that was it was a 14-minute segment beforehand. And I was sitting next to you, nervous. This is my first time ever in front of a camera on national airways, on air, live. You're like, no recording, nothing like that. And I'm like, dang, like, what if I stutter, mess up, blah, blah, blah.
No, I remember you talking about it, yeah.
All my friends and family are watching. And then as it started, the words just kind of were flowing out. And it was kind of natural. And
when you have a guy like Ben next to you.
Ben's guiding me, it was a lot of fun.
Try to make it comfortable,
I am upset, though, that pick, my first pick on air, who everybody watched and listened to, got murdered. And I got a text. Yeah. I got text afterwards from fellow members of Sports Grid, like, Jack, since he came so close to scoring a touchdown in that game.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Again, one of the dumbest things I've ever been a part of was Jack having an 18-1 it was some ridiculous number.
No, it was 100 to win 11 grand.
What was it?
Yeah.
It was 100 to win 11K. I had a random college basketball pick parlayed with Cincy winning the championship.
Wasn't it like South Florida covering as a 13.5 point dog or some crazy crap?
I had South Florida at home covering 13 against Auburn.
Yeah.
And they covered.
like one was in November. The other one we needed to wait until we got to the college football playoff to even have Cincinnati the opportunity to be part of the Final Four in that college football season. They are. And then everybody's like, Jack, you need to hedge out. Jack, you need to cash out. Jack, there are so many different options for looking at Alabama in this college football playoff semifinal as a 13.5-point favorite, because since he's not going to win this game outright, and my man was as brazen and as stubborn as possible, letting it ride the entire show.
I wasn't going to cash that out. I would have felt way too bad if I did and Cincinnati had won.
Well, don't worry. He's about to put a ton of money on the Pirates to win the World Series. It's a cycle, Ben. He does. It's every year.
Yeah. That's good.
One of these years it'll hit.
We did mention conference tournaments, and the odds are out. But so, Ben, who's one Power 5 team that you're seeing right now at a valuable price that's catching your eye?
Are we counting the Big East as a Power 5? Is it part of the Power 6?
Ben probably has the same pick as Paul does, but let's see.
Oh, yeah, please, Ben.
Is it Villanova?
Oh, it's Villanova.
Okay.
It's the Wildcats.
There it is.
Paul,
I love this.
We're in a similar mind frame because Villanova right now has the 5th best price to win the Big East on the FanDuel Sportsbook. The price actually got $1 longer after their season-ending loss to UConn, but let's not forget where Villanova was entering that basketball game, winners of 6 of their last 7 games, and a completely different team in the final month of the regular season, the final 2 months of the regular season, when you have a healthy and capable Cam Whitmore, when you add in Justin Moore recovering from the Achilles injury that he suffered in last year's Elite Eight, and you allow Kyle Neptune with Jalen Daniels, with some of the other players that they have now obviously a part of that rotation, to groove things out, to figure his way through his opening year in Philadelphia. So I know that Villanova, with a 16-15 record at the end of the regular season, has one path into the big dance once again. That is to win or at least reach the tournament final in the Big East Conference. If they get to that point, you have some hedging opportunities, although I know, as I just learned, we never cash out here on the Paul Farrington Show. But you do allow yourself an opportunity if you get to Saturday night at Madison Square Garden, where it's going to be a huge Villanova crowd regardless, that you have an opportunity for guaranteed profitability. And knowing how well the Cats are playing, knowing how hungry Nova is going to be, I think it's a really, really good look right now for Villanova to win the Big East tournament with some good value, because they are much further down the board than Creighton, Marquette. Obviously, UConn's on a heater as well, and I expect UConn to maybe be there at the end facing off against Villanova. But I think it's really good value on Villanova at the moment.
Yeah, and I think UConn would be the scariest matchup for Villanova in the Big East tournament. But you're totally right. Justin Moore, he's coming back, and he's looked a lot better. Every single week, you can tell he's playing at a higher level and starting to look more and more like the guy we saw last season. But their path as well, Creighton and Xavier, you just beat both those teams too. So I'm loving Villanova. Jack doesn't really like that pick, though.
Well, here's the thing about Villanova, and this is from my heart, not really my head. I don't personally think that the Big East is super strong and that they could beat anybody in this tournament. 100%, sure. They could.
Right.
This stems back years and years and years for me. Years and years and years when I grew up a Pitt fan. I went to Boston to the Elite Eight, and Scotty Reynolds drove down the floor and hit a buzzer beater to send me home in tears as a 9-year-old. And ever since then, when I get an opportunity now to look at Villanova, and there's a chance this team doesn't reach the NCAA tournament, I jump right at that. So I'm not. They can win. They have probably the best player in the Big East when he's playing to the best of his ability in Cam Whitmore. Mm-hmm. They have Justin Moore back, so they can absolutely win this. But I do look at teams like Marquette and Providence as better value. You have Marquette at plus 380, the number 1 seed, a team who's beaten Baylor by 30 points, a team who's beaten Nova 2 times, I believe. A team who's beaten Creighton twice.
Swept Creighton.
Swept Nova. Beat Baylor by 30 points. The number 1 seed.
That number's weird, though, for that.
And they're plus 380 at Marquette. Providence now 19-1. Very, very bad loss to Seton Hall. A game I had Providence -7. Final home game. Brutal. That's why I do believe they are 19-1. But still, a team who's beaten Nova by 15 points with Justin Moore. Yeah. A team who's beaten Marquette, beaten UConn, beaten Creighton. I think there's a lot of valuable teams on this board. I lean either Marquette at plus 380 or Providence at 19-1 in the Big East.
I will just say, too, Marquette obviously winning their first Big East regular season conference title outright in the program's history. Shaka Smart's first ever conference outright title in his time as a coach. Jack, it feels a lot like the Providence Friars of last year, right? When they were still overlooked and undervalued by the marketplace the entirety of the season, whether it was an individual game spread at the end of the Big East regular season into the Big East tournament, or of course, early on in the NCAA tournament when everybody picked South Dakota State to pull off the upset when Providence was the 4 seed and the Jackrabbits were a 13 seed. There was no chance that South Dakota State was losing that basketball game, and yet Providence made it all the way through that round. So when you look at where the market slightly undervalues a team that they have a preconception on, because it's an overall sample size, right? These ratings, these power ratings that go through the year that generate these numbers, whether a future price, an individual game spread, whatever it might be, it's an overall sample size. Marquette was picked to finish 9th in the Big East. They had the 9th best preseason odds. Those things don't just go away. They're still a part of the equation. Yes, you speed it up. Yes, you change your algorithm to more accurately represent what we have seen throughout the entirety of the year, but there's still that slight maybe undervaluing of the Golden Eagles, even in this current iteration in the marketplace at times. So despite being the number 1 overall seed, Jack, to your point, Marquette does present value. And of course, they control their own path because they are that top seed. They don't have to worry about the 6-3 matchup or whatever it might be. So it's a good look. There is still value even on the top overall seed in that tournament.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up there about kind of last year's Providence. I remember Providence, they played in the Sweet 16. They had a 1-point lead on Kansas
to the
with
wire.
3 minutes left.
Yep.
Which I'm getting.
They were a 12.5 point dog that game.
12 and a half point dog.
You love them all
One
year
of
too.
I was
easier bets.
Yeah.
I was like, they're gonna stay close. I don't think they're gonna win and advance to the Elite Eight. Obviously, Kansas ended up winning the national championship, but that's what the Friars did. A lot of people consider it the luck metric because they had the top luck metric in all of college basketball based on KenPom. Or you look at a team and what we do here on the Paul Farrington Show, just keeping games close and competitive and covering numbers. Maybe Providence wasn't going to knock off KU, but they could keep the game within 12.5. And sure enough, that's what Ed Cooley's team did.
Which they did. I get similar vibes from this Marquette team as last year's Providence. That's a good point.
And Ben, I know that you're big into the Big Ten.
It's Big Ten Ben.
Big Ten Ben. Yeah, that's the nickname I've heard. Who are you liking there right now?
Paul, it's a great question because when you ask Power 5 high major conference tournaments, I think the Big Ten presents value literally across the board. There's none on Purdue. I wouldn't bet Purdue at this point. I don't really think that's a good value pick because they're the only team shorter than $2 right now to win the Big Ten tournament. But as I'm sure you guys know, to enter the Big Ten regular season finale on Sunday, there was 6 games left, 12 teams in action, and a 7-way tie for second place entering the regular season finale. What does that mean? Everything was up in the air, and everything is going to continue to be up in the air this week in Chicago, where because Michigan lost to Indiana in overtime in Assembly Hall, they went from the 2 seed where they win to the 8 seed that has to play Maryland in the not Maryland. They have to play Rutgers in the 8-9 opening round matchup after the day 1 bye on Thursday, when they could have had the double bye as the 2 seed on Friday. That's how crazy the ending of the regular season was in the Big Ten, which I think means there's a ton of value out there. Certainly for teams like Michigan, Wisconsin, maybe even Penn State that need at least 1 win, it would seem, in the Big Ten tournament to solidify their NCAA tournament resume. Or it allows you an opportunity for a team like Illinois, the 7 seed in the Big Ten tournament, who at their best this year has been one of the best teams in college basketball. They have some of the most marquee wins in the country against UCLA in Texas. The Bruins could be a 1 seed. I think the Longhorns will end up being a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Illinois has beaten both of those teams. They have some marquee wins throughout the Big Ten Conference as well. That double overtime thriller just last week against Michigan at home in the State Farm Center. But at their worst, they have looked like an abysmal basketball team. A 20-point loss to Missouri, a rival. A 15-point loss to Northwestern, a rival. A double-digit loss to Indiana, a rival, where they look lifeless. With that being said, when they are playing at their best, and that's a big if and a when, but if it happens in the Big Ten tournament, Illinois at 10-1 has as much talent up and down their roster as any other team in the Big Ten Conference, including Purdue. And because Purdue is the 1 seed, Illinois is the 7. If they were to knock off, I believe the 10 seed right now, if I remember correctly, I can't remember, but I'll get back to you. I know it's a favorable matchup for Illinois. If they knock off the 10 seed in their opening round game, it's Penn State, excuse me. If they knock off Penn State as the 10 seed, they then advance to take on Northwestern, who's the 2 seed, their in-state rival. Go look at the series history between Illinois and Northwestern. Yes, the Wildcats have been really good this year, but they had a double-digit lead on the road in Champaign. and they lost that game about 2 weeks ago. That's a team that Illinois is comfortable against. So you beat Northwestern in the quarterfinal. You get to the semifinal on Saturday. You're playing on a roll, and then you have a more favorable matchup to see the other side. Purdue being the 1 seed atop that bracket. Indiana's a 3 seed. Illinois has beaten Indiana already this year as they split their regular season matchup. So Illinois is a team that when you look at a 10-1 price, I like the Fighting Illini if, and again, it's a big if, they're playing their best basketball, but they could be a very dangerous team if they figure something out in Chicago that propels them the rest of the way in March.
Yeah, I'm looking up and down this Big Ten odds list. Anybody to me can win this Big Ten tournament, and I love
Truly.
Michigan at 15-1. I've watched
Truly.
Michigan this entire season. They're the heartbreak kings. They lose game after game after game by 3 points, 4 points, 2 points, games down to the wire. They had Illinois beat in Champaign. They had Indiana beat in Bloomington, 10-point lead late.
Yep.
If they win these 2 games, Michigan's safe in the field. And when you have probably, in a lot of these games against anybody, Michigan is most likely going to have the best player on the floor.
Oh, he's so good.
In Hunter Dickinson.
Yeah.
I watched this team, Dickinson, Kobe Buffkin, Jet Howard. This is a tough team to beat, and teams have struggled to beat them all year. If Michigan has been on the other side of some of these losses throughout the entire season, this is the team safe in the field, a team probably who's in the 6-7 range right now as a popular pick.
Yeah, they've also found ways the past few years to turn it on at the right moment, Michigan. So this is a team that we've seen make runs in the Big Ten tournament, make runs in the NCAA tournament. So I think that's a good pick there as well.
Jack, to echo your point, Michigan is 17-14 at the end of the regular season. 12 of those 14 losses have been by just a couple of points, all of them in the single digits. Those combined 12 losses by a 50 total point margin, and 3 of them in overtime. When you look at Michigan's season, that is going to be why, if they don't make the NCAA tournament, it's all of those close losses that they failed to convert at the end. But if you take the optimistic approach, Jack, which I would agree with you, on a neutral floor, things might change, and Michigan is as talented as any other team. And again, they're the 8 seed. It wouldn't surprise me if Nebraska got hot and made a run to semifinal Saturday in the Big Ten Conference. It wouldn't surprise me to see Iowa figure it out, as we have seen throughout this regular season with Chris Murray, one of the best players in the Big Ten Conference. I could make a legitimate argument for 12 of the 14 teams if Ohio State figures out they have 2 of the best freshmen in the conference in Bryce Sensabaugh and Bruce Thornton, and they start playing better basketball. You can make an argument for the Buckeyes. I think the only team realistically that can't win the Big Ten tournament is Minnesota, and they're the 14 seed. They take on Nebraska, the 11 seed, in their opening round. Other than that, anybody could get hot and anybody could make a run. So, yes, the value is there really up and down the Big Ten Conference. And when you look at those tournament title odds, just probably not in Purdue because they're the only team that is less than a $2 price.
You know, Jack, you mentioned a lot of close losses for Michigan. Notre Dame Fighting Irish, a lot of close losses. No, I'm kidding.
No,
I'm not going to go into that.
100%. What are they, plus 16K for the ACC?
Oh, God, yeah. It's been a tough season. But
yeah.
But let's go. Yeah. Did you see that Mike Bray went out into a local bar in South Bend the other night after the game?
So, Paul, that was a line where Pitt was a 2.5-point favorite, knowing they needed the game, which would have given them a full game advantage over Miami entering that final game where the Canes ended up winning and Pitt fell all the way to the 5 seed, missing the double bye in the ACC. It was a line that you looked at and said, why are the Panthers only a 2.5-point favorite against a 2-win ACC Notre Dame team? The line even worked to 3.5 in favor of Pittsburgh. What the odds makers forgot is that Mike Bray made a promise that in his final home game, he would be chugging JMO with the people out at the college bars in South Bend.
It was great.
And those are things that was the jackpot.
But that stuff matters.
I told Paul the second Pitt rolled all over Syracuse on senior night.
Yeah.
Just became ranked. Now you're going to a team everybody thinks is terrible. I was telling Paul, Notre Dame is not going to lose this game.
No, I mean, I knew that. I knew that.
And I couldn't bet it because my heart, I love the Pitt Panthers, but
right.
If I bet with my head, I was on Notre Dame.
But yeah, the second he said that, I started getting a bunch of texts from people with the tweet and the quotes of Bray going out to the linebacker. And you sometimes people forget to factor that stuff in. You mentioned Pitt, Jack. Why don't we hit on the ACC real quick? You like them a lot, right?
I like Pitt when it comes to the value in the ACC tournament. I want to see if you agree, Ben. I'll bring up Miami in a little bit. I actually like I think there's value on the Canes to go far in the NCAA tournament. But when it comes to Pitt's in there at 11-1 with the same records as Miami and UVA, right atop the ACC. A team who's beaten Miami once, played 2 close games with them. They've beaten UVA. They've won on the road at NC State. One of the best teams all year long in the ACC. One of the oldest teams, too, in college basketball. A bunch of 23, 24-year-old kids older than the Thunder, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there 11-1. Doesn't make much sense to me how Miami and UVA and Duke as the favorite, plus 280, and Pitt sitting there. Their path would be Georgia Tech or Florida State, who they're going to beat. Mm-hmm. Duke in the quarters, who they played a close game with, blew a lead in Cameron Indoor. Miami, who they split with, 2 close games. Then the championship. You're giving me Pitt at 11-1 to win the ACC. That's one of the best bets to me on the board in the conference tournament.
When you look at Pittsburgh, Jack, it's the same exact thing as Providence last year.
Yep.
Pitt right now, they had an opportunity on Saturday, albeit a road game, but they gave Miami everything they could handle. That game was within 2 possessions, pretty much the entirety of the game.
They had a game-winning 3, missed it.
Yeah, absolutely. They truly gave Miami, in Coral Gables, knowing how important home court advantage has been this year in college basketball, everything the Canes can handle in a road environment with a conference tournament and with a conference title, I should say, and the number 1 seed in the conference tournament on the line. Pittsburgh is ranked 68th right now in KenPom. 68th. This is a team that could have won their conference regular season championship, and with that would have been the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament, and somehow, some way is probably going to be a 10 seed in the NCAA tournament.
I was just saying before, that's the most ridiculous thing, because you'll have people who pick, including myself, who like Miami to go far as a 4 seed, UVA as a 4 seed, and you have Pitt on the bubble, who was a 3-pointer away from winning the ACC, getting the top seed in that tournament, and finishing with 15 conference wins, and they're on the bubble. Doesn't make much sense to me at all. Yeah,
21 wins this year. Anytime you get to the 20-win barometer, it should solidify your NCAA tournament resume. And I think Pitt is going to be in the tournament. I don't think it even matters if they were to get upset. And the issue being now, Jack, is because they lost that game and because Duke went on the road and beat North Carolina and because Clemson was victorious in their regular season finale, Pitt fell all the way back to the 5 seed. So it wasn't like they lost, all right, they're the 2 seed. They fell all the way back out of the double bye in the ACC tournament, which is ridiculous to think about. So now the path becomes harder, but I would agree. Again, it's an undervalue, overlook by the odds component if you believe in Pittsburgh. It's an interesting thing when you don't think the metrics have caught up fast enough. When you don't think the odds have caught up fast enough, you feel like you have an upper hand on the market because you have seen Pittsburgh with your own eyes. You look at their record where they've won 21 basketball games. They have an all-conference performer in Jamarius Burton, who was literally named to the first team All-ACC on Monday afternoon. When you look at all of that mixed into it, yes, there's a ton of value at 11-1 for Pitt, but another team that I would mention in the ACC, knowing that they are a blue blood, knowing that they have to win games in the ACC tournament to get into the NCAA tournament, is North Carolina. If they start to shoot it like they did at the end of the year, not against Duke on Saturday night to end out the regular season, but if they start to shoot it like Caleb Love can and like RJ Davis can, they have Armando Bacot inside. North Carolina has that pedigree. They need to win in Greensboro, at least get to the conference tournament final to have an opportunity to be on the right side of the bubble come Selection Sunday. North Carolina's plus 750. They have a lot of value, I think, as well.
And you know what that team can be, too, from last season. When they get hot, they're one of the best teams in the country. Kind of weird this season, right? With North Carolina, Arkansas, all these teams that were ranked so highly at the start of the season, just falling out of the top 25. I can't remember many times where I've seen so many top 10 teams, preseason top 10 teams, just completely fall off a cliff. Very weird.
Absolutely.
But, Ben, so moving on to the big dance. It's a wide open field. We're going through these conference tournaments right now, and there's just so many teams we were saying that can win each conference tournament. When you bring all of them together, the NCAA tournament as a whole, this is going to be, it's one of the most wide open fields that I can remember. Do you agree with that? And then also, who are you thinking about right now? Maybe you don't have a pick, but is there someone that you're eyeing?
Certainly so, Paul. I think it is going to be one of the most wide open, madness intensifying March Madness NCAA tournaments we have seen in recent memory. The last few years in college basketball, adding in the COVID year of 2020 that was taken from us, there was clear top teams in the country. Baylor, Gonzaga. And then last year, it was still Gonzaga going into the tournament. And those 1 seeds were certainly the best that we saw by the time we got to the blue blood battle that was the Final Four in New Orleans with Duke, Nova, UNC, and of course Kansas, who ultimately won the national championship. One thing I will remind people, Paul, with knowing how up in the air this is going to be, knowing that we call it March Madness for a reason, this is a tournament. Things are random. It really depends on your path, what your seed line looks like, and who your matchup is against. Coaches will tell you, I could give a crap if I'm a 2, 3, or 6 seed, depending on who I'm playing against and what my portion of the bracket looks like. That is all that they really care about by the time you are rewarded for getting in to the field of 68. But with all the madness that we expect, with all the chaos that we will certainly see, 1 seeds win the day. A 1 seed has won the national championship for 5 consecutive seasons. A 1 seed has won the national title 8 of the last 10 years. Since the field expanded to 64, it's now at 68. But since it's expanded to 64 in 1985, a 1, 2, or 3 seed has won the NCAA tournament 33 of 37 years. The cream does rise to the top by the time you get to the Final Four. And although we don't see all the 1 seeds get to the Final Four, it's only happened once in the history of the big dance, you do see a 1 seed generally win out at the end of the day. So who are the 1 seeds most likely going to be at the end of conference tournament week? Alabama, Purdue, maybe battling it out with UCLA, Kansas for sure. They have a good run at the Big 12 conference tournament in Kansas City. And the team that will be looking to get back to their hometown in H-Town, Houston. Now, there will be that narrative component of it, that Houston is trying to get home for a run to the Final Four. Please also look at their postseason pedigree. A Final Four run 2 years ago, an Elite Eight run last year. And they have all of the same pieces for the most part.
They
all
even
of the
have
same
more.
Pieces.
They're healthy. Last year, they weren't even healthy.
Absolutely so. And you add in the talented freshmen that Houston has as well. You have Jamal Shedd, who was there. Marcus Sasser wasn't there last year, but he's one of the best players in the country. Tremont Mark wasn't there last year, but he's one of the best players on the Cougs. They have a team. I believe his name is Jarius Butler. If I'm not mistaken.
Walker.
I'll go look up who the
Walker.
Walker.
Believe, right?
Thank you.
IMG freshman, right?
Indeed.
Yeah,
huge, big body,
team.
really presents a lot in terms of floor spacing and the way that they spread out and do everything for the Cougs. And you know they're going to defend the crap out of the ball. If you score 60 against them, good luck. But they have a lot of offensive pieces to now score 70, 75 points. I think so. I have 3 bets, 3 bets, at least 2, maybe 3 bets in right now for an NCAA tournament specific type of wager. One is on Houston to reach the Final Four. I got it at a plus 165 price just 2 weeks ago. It is now even money plus 100. Again, things are random. I don't know where Houston is going to be seated. I have no idea if Kelvin Sampson's Cougars are going to be the number 1 overall seed, if they'll get to control their path, most likely through the South region. I don't know. But I really do feel confident in the brand of basketball that Houston plays, knowing the narrative component, sure, but really just their pedigree of being here for the last 2 seasons with the same cast and crew. I have a Creighton 25-1 ticket to win the national championship.
All right.
I got way back in November, way back in November. And it got good at a point. It got bad at a point. It got longer after the loss to Marquette 2 weeks ago in Omaha. It's now back around that 30-1 number. So I'm okay with it. I think Creighton can make a run. And then I think I will probably go into a Final Four ticket on Baylor after I see their path, after I see what seed line they get, because Baylor has the makeup of the team that won the national championship 2 years ago. Paul, what are you doing right now?
No, I'm just like me and you aligned very similarly on almost everything.
Paul's a Baylor guy as well.
I'm not sold on them yet, but I just look at it and I say guard play is so important in the tournament, and they have three of the best guards in the country. And Keontae George is one of the best players.
100%. And if he's healthy, which we expect him to be by the time we get to the end of the Big 12 tournament, we're fine. Because it's Keontae George, it's LJ Cryer, it's Adam Flagler. LJ Cryer, Adam Flagler, members of the NCAA Tournament champion team 2 seasons ago. They weren't as big of a component as they are now, but Flagler got a lot of experience. And you have the same 3-wing that you had now with Baylor as 2 years ago for Scott Drew, when you had Macy O'Teague, Jared Butler, and of course Davion Mitchell. Probably better defensively, that Baylor team. Actually, much better defensively
when you watch
than this Baylor team.
So
oh my
quick.
God, just incredible.
So quick.
Length, the way that Davion Mitchell could defend the perimeter, truly nothing like it. But those same big men down low, Flo Thamba, Jonathan Chama-Chachua, they are there as well still. This team is really well constructed, very similar in the way they are constructed to the team that won the NCAA tournament just 2 years ago. I think, depending on seed line, depending on region and path, I'm going to get a Baylor Bears ticket to reach the Final Four as well. And that would be my one final cautionary tale is if, like me, you're like, I like Baylor. I didn't love Baylor enough to jump in 2 weeks ago when there were plus 500 to reach it to the Final Four. You can wait just a few more days. The value is not necessarily going to be zapped unless Baylor probably wins the Big 12 tournament, which I don't expect, / even if they did, I don't think the value is going to be drowned out by any means. You can wait to see what the path looks like, how the bracket lays out. That if Baylor's a 3 seed, they don't have to take on a dangerous 11 or a dangerous 6, where you know who the 2 and the 1 is in their portion of the bracket as well. I think there is a benefit to waiting a little bit. So Baylor will probably be one that I add, and I think those will be the 3 that I go into the big dance with.
I wish you could see our producer, Zack, right now, who's a big Baylor fan. He's grinning from ear to ear. He's loving what he's hearing.
Neon green on right now, too.
But you're so right about
Zach.
that. You're so right about, too. You have to wait to see the path. And the conference tournaments as well. I love watching, seeing who's getting hot at the right time, because a lot of times you see a team, and I keep going back to Michigan here, but like Michigan has gone on these big runs, and they go on to run the tournament. So to me, it's important to watch the conference play. Jack, didn't you have a pick you wanted to share?
I do. I'll share it in a sec. I do want to bring up one point on Baylor, though. I do love that Big 12 because all year long in the Big 12, these teams show us that they can beat the best teams in the country week after week after week.
Well, how many are making it from the Big 12 right now?
All
probably,
but one. Yeah, all but Oklahoma.
I think 6 or I think it'll probably be around like 6 or 7 of the 10 would be my guess. I don't know. I don't think Texas Tech.
State's on the
Oak
bubble.
State sucks.
Oak State's on the bubble. Texas Tech is not going to go. Oklahoma's not going to go. Oak State, West Virginia will be there. So yeah, probably 7 or 8.
But this team, they've beaten Kansas, they've beaten Texas. These teams show that they can beat the best teams in the country all season long, which is why I do love the Big 12 for sure. But you guys mentioned guard play in the NCAA tournament. And I totally agree. I think when you have veteran guards, skilled guards, depth at the guard position, it means a lot in the NCAA tournament. And that is why I am big on Miami at plus 6,000 to be the last team standing. This is a team who finished the year 24-6, 15 wins in the ACC, the number 1 seed. And keep in mind that Miami blew, of course, you don't like to see this, they blew a 25-point home lead against Florida State. They blew a 10-point lead in the final minute and a half in the Peterson Event Center in Pittsburgh. Those 2 losses become wins, which 98% of the time they are. Miami is sitting here at 26-4 with 17 wins in the ACC. If Duke does that, Duke's the number 1 overall seed. You have Isaiah Wong, you have Jordan Miller, you have the Nigel Pack, the Kansas State transfer. You have Wooga Poplar. Wooga. So much depth and so much skill at that position. And I think it's 60-1 is a valuable pick. A team who was in the Elite 8 last year, now you return Isaiah Wong, a Wooden Award candidate, a player who can win you a game against anybody. I think this team can beat anybody put in front of them when they're playing their best basketball. And you're giving me them at 60-1 right now to cut down the nets. I think it's valuable. I do want to bring up a point, though, like you said, Ben, about Baylor. I do want to wait a little bit on the Canes to see how they do in the ACC tournament. I would like them on that 3 line. I've seen a lot of projections. They're the 4-5 matching up with Trace Jackson Davis in the second round, which I don't want to see. Matching up with the team full of 25-year-olds and Drake in the first round, which I wouldn't want to see. If they can win this ACC tournament, that another win over Duke, who's a projected a top 5 seed, another win over UVA, who's going to be a top 4, top 5 seed, maybe get to the 3 line, a 4 line with an easier path, and I love Miami at where they're slated right now on this board. I think it's the most valuable bet on the board right now at the moment.
It's really smart, Jack. It is really smart to take that approach as well, the wait and see approach until you know the bracket. If you bet Miami back in January when they started their ascension in the ACC, great. You got the best value you probably could have gotten on the Hurricanes. If they win the ACC tournament with the second best price to do so as the number 1 overall seed, is their number going to be a couple of bucks shorter? I'm sure, to win the national championship. 54-1, 52-1, but still a value play. It's not like they're about to be 18-1, which still might be value after they prove themselves in the ACC tournament against teams that are playing better basketball like Duke and North Carolina. So I think it's really smart to have that idea of, hey, I love this team. I love the way they're built. I know they have that postseason pedigree, and they've been there in the big dance before. I love their stars in Nigel Pack and Isaiah Long, who is there with Miami last year as they made their run to the Elite Eight. You know you have all those components that you like. Just make sure the value backs it up with the bet, and you can wait just a few more days. Early until
you
Sunday.
Think he's waiting? He says he's waiting, but have you actually waited?
I'm gonna wait. I don't want to be a 5 seed.
I thought you placed the bet. Didn't you send a screenshot?
I cashed it out.
Okay.
I placed the bet $100 to win 5,500.
That's not a term that's very familiar with this show.
I know. It was rare, but
Well, hold on a second. You cashed out a bet that you already placed on Miami to win the national championship, and then you are going to bet that same bet again?
Well, I did it. It was about a week ago, and I placed it. Then I'm like, you know what? Let me wait and see. So I cashed it out for the same for my same wager.
So you got $100 back.
So I got $100 back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
all right. Well,
interesting
approach. But
I'm probably,
all right.
I probably will hit it because I don't want to watch Miami win the whole thing and be like, dang, like I said this. So I'll probably hit it.
Like you bet it.
I had it in there.
Did you make this bet on like a Saturday 12 a.m. kind of thing, or was this
it could have been. It could have. It had some in me, and I was just placing the bet. Who knows? But again, this team. Look at their losses too. They've lost games on the road to NC State in overtime. They lost in Cameron Indoor by 2. It takes a full 40 minutes. You need a knife to beat this team. And you're giving me them 60. You're giving me 60-1 on the Canes right now.
Ben, one more question for you here. Jack and I. So again, I think I agree with you that probably taking a 1 or 2 seed is the way to go here. But
yeah,
Jack and I are pretty anti-chalk people. We just
I know that.
It's hard when we're in these pools with thousands of people, and if we put Alabama in there, we have to beat 300, 400, 500 people. So a lot of times we'll try and find a 3 to 5 that we like. Sometimes we'll settle on a 2. I've gone rogue and hit SMU as a 6 before. It's one of the worst bets of all time.
I'll be on Miami this year.
But is there anyone in the 3 to 5 range right now? We've talked about Miami a bit. I know you have Creighton, but is there anyone in that 3 to 5 or even below if you like them that could win it all?
It's a really good question, Paul, because I think winning it all is different than like making a run to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I'm interested in winning the big one here.
Yeah, I was really high on Indiana potentially being that team out of the Big Ten to make a run as a 5 seed, but they got bad news over the weekend that Xavier Johnson, a very talented guard, is not going to be able to come back this year from his foot injury. He is going to recover, sit out the remainder of the year. He'll be back next year in Bloomington. I thought if Xavier Johnson, and up until about 48 hours ago, he was supposed to be back, and then he wasn't back for the Michigan game and obviously has been ruled out. So that would have been one. Listen, there's a couple of blue bloods, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, and I hate myself for saying this. Duke is a trending upward team that has now figured it out with as talented of a starting 5 as you will find. Kyle Filipowski is playing incredible. Jeremy Roach has that experience. They have a team that can truly, truly play. They are going to be an undervalued 5 or 6 seed just based on their overall resume. That could be something like we see with a North Carolina last year, where you have that blue blood pedigree and you know what it takes with a very talented roster, and you just struggled early in the year and you have started to figure it out. Kentucky is another team. You need to keep an eye on the depth chart for Kentucky. You need to keep an eye on the injury report, because if Kason Wallace is healthy, and he should be, there was a chance he could have played against Arkansas. They ruled him out. They still got a big win on the road in Bud Walton. If Kason Wallace is healthy, they have figured out the point guard position after the injury to Xavier Wheeler. If Xavier Wheeler, for whatever reason, gets healthy by the time they get to the round of 64, awesome. You have a really talented Kentucky team that's main issue this year has been figuring out the point guard orchestration of their offense. They have 2 great options now. They might work in tandem if Xavier Wheeler can be healthy, but Kason Wallace has really filled in admirably to that role for the guy that was expected to lead their team in Xavier Wheeler. Jacob Toppin is sensational. You have the reigning National Player of the Year in Oscar Tshiebwe starting to play like that reigning National Player of the Year again. Kentucky's probably going to be a 6 seed, a 7 seed. I'm not entirely sure what the bracketology says, but of course they are not the 7 seed that you would think out of a smaller high major or coming from the middle of the pack in a high major. They are Kentucky. And although Coach Cal was on the hot seat a couple of weeks ago, He now has his team playing their best basketball at the best time. I would look at Kentucky. I think Texas A&M is probably going to be a little bit too high. I don't think they have enough offense to get it done. I think they're going to win a couple of games, probably be a Sweet 16 team. That's how I look at the Aggies. But I think Kentucky, Paul, in the 6-7 line, but not really being a 6 or 7 seed type team in the NCAA tournament, is probably going to be where I would go if I was looking down the board.
And we saw that last time Kentucky was an 8, superstar, Julius Randle, NCAA Tournament championship game.
They're always playing their best basketball come tournament time.
You look at these twos, too. We were just saying how it's an open field. These twos will be Texas, Arizona, these teams like that, who Kentucky plays them in a 7-2 matchup. Am I surprised at all if John Calipari wins that game? Nope.
What's that line, Jack? Let's say Kentucky's playing Arizona in a 7-2 matchup in the South region.
On a
2.5?
On a neutral floor, Arizona. Yeah, Arizona's a
4.5?
3.5 point favorite. Yeah.
Right.
They're
So right around a
favorite.
one-possession basketball game is what the expectation is. I'll take that.
Yep.
When Kentucky's already like 45-1 to win the national championship. Their odds are getting shorter and shorter by the day, but I'll take that. If Arkansas ever figured it out, I really wanted to believe in Nick Smith Jr. coming back for the Hogs, but they really haven't.
I've been waiting on them too all year. They never got going.
They started to figure it out a little bit. Then they go into that Alabama game. They lose, fine, whatever. Not a huge deal. And then what? They get stomped in their next game by Auburn or whatever it was. They just looked terrible in that next game.
They were at Auburn, I think.
Like 2 weeks ago, and just not great.
Another team I would mention. Tennessee beat them by like 20.
Tennessee
beat them by like 20 points. Mopped them, yeah.
Tennessee, I'm also, speaking of teams that like you like or dislike, I'm going to fade the crap out of Tennessee. They are going to be an incredibly overvalued 2 or 3 seed. Zakai Ziegler is out for the year. He distributed over 8 assists per game. They're really good defensively. One of the most efficient defenses, in fact, the most efficient defense in college basketball. We see when you come to tournament time, though, when you play slow pace and you focus on defense because your offense struggles, and now you don't have the best guy, at least in facilitating all your offense. If you only score 60 points, you have an off night, somebody can beat you. So I'm going to fade Tennessee, whatever that 3-6 matchup looks like, maybe a 3-11 or a 3-14, depending on what that 14 seed looks like as well. One final team I just want to mention. Can't wait to see where they fall in the draw. Can't wait to see what their seed line is. TCU.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yes.
We love Jamie Dixon on the show.
I want to bring up the same thing.
Jamie Dixon guy, if only he could figure out the 2-3 zone against Syracuse. But other than that, Jack, I think that when you look at Jamie Dixon in the how was the first 4?
We used to carve that zone right up. We used to carve that zone right up.
Yeah, with DeJuan Blair when he was with Pitt. And then how about that? The 6-11 game in the 2017, 2018 NCAA tournament when you thought Jamie Dixon would know the zone? Yeah, you're right. Anyway, as you look at this year's TCU team.
Carry on.
And there's going to be no Syracuse 2-3 zone in the NCAA tournament.
Well, you never know. This is your time to make that run. It's March.
Listen, I don't want it to happen. I don't want him to have another handout, that being Jim Boeheim. He needs to retire, sir. Please retire. Stop holding back the program that you built. I can get into that.
Right, what's his name? The guard. Who's the guard on Syracuse? I'm blanking on his name right now.
Joe Girard?
No, Girard. Yeah, this is the time of year where Girard can shoot from 35 feet and it's like a layup.
There's probably going to be a game in the tournament, in the ACC tournament, that is, where he scores like 27. Jesse Edwards has 20 and 12, and they're going to make me believe.
They'll beat Miami as the one in the quarterfinals. They're going to beat Miami. And I'll be off the Canes just like that.
Yeah, and I'll have some kind of belief. Actually, I think Miami gives them a terrible time knowing how good their guards are. Anyway, when you just to finish up on TCU quickly, they have so much veteran experience with Mike Miles Jr. really leading the way. They also defend the crap out of the basketball, but I think they're better offensively than people give them credit for. So I would keep an eye on the Horned Frogs, depending on where they fall in the field of 68. 4, 5, 6, 7 line, somewhere probably in that general ballpark, probably closer to a 6, that I think TCU could make some noise, just knowing how well they play, how much experience they have. And again, they're going to make you work for every single bit of it, as we saw last year against Arizona in that 8-9 game in the South region in the round of 32. That was one of the best games of the tournament. So TCU is going to be a team I pay close attention to, probably not to make an Elite 8 run or a Final 4 run, but at least to win a couple of games early on in the NCAA tournament for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this team, right now they sit at 35-1 to win it all. Yeah. I think there is better value on the board, but I think they are fantastic. I mean, they have a road win in Waco, a road win in Allen Fieldhouse where they blew out the Jayhawks.
Yeah,
they've beaten
one of the weirder games of the year.
They've beaten Texas. You look at this team, it's probably a 6 or a 7 seed, and they could beat anybody they play. And I mean, 35-1, I think is a decent price on them at the moment. Again, probably would not pick them to win it all. They've also lost some games. I'm questionable. They're tough to get a read on for me at the moment.
Yeah.
All season they've been that way for me, though. I think they're good, and I'll bet on them. They lose someone they shouldn't, but they are a really talented team if they get hot.
I want to ask you, before we wrap up here, Ben, one question on how do you value where a team may be seated versus, the strength of schedule and strength of conference between a team who's seated, 6-7 range? Like, would you look to Arizona as a 2, but they're playing Stanford and Wazoo and Oregon State all year? Really, only UCLA. They only just play each other.
Right.
And Arizona's done nothing. They've been a high seed every year and they've done nothing. Or you look at a TCU as a 6 or a 7, a team who's probably beaten 7 teams just as good as Arizona throughout the year. Where do you look when it comes to filling out your bracket in that sense?
Jack, overall rankings, seed lines, in my estimation,
doesn't mean much.
What they are is they are a reward for results, right? Mm-hmm. Because of your tournament resume and because of what you have done up until this point in the regular season and the conference tournament, it is a reward for your accomplishments. It does not mean how good you necessarily are in an individual game matchup or what your future looks like. It is not a projection-based type of thing. So when you look at that seed line for Arizona, are they deserving of a 2 seed? Of course. Are they as good as your perennial 2 seed in the NCAA tournament? I had a lot of thoughts that they could be, led by Kerr Kriisa, but that really hasn't happened this year for Tommy Lloyd. That is why you have some teams that will be a little bit more battle-tested. And because of the overinflated resumes of other, or that reward for that resume, it's all about that individual game matchup. So when you look at a 2-7, you might be thinking, all right, the 7 has a very difficult path to get to where they need to go, to get to the regional semifinals and an appearance in the Sweet 16. But then pay attention to what the spread is going to be for that individual game, because that's the beauty of it. I just mentioned 2 teams, Texas A&M and TCU, who I would not bet on, especially with that 35-1 number, Jack, where I don't think there's a ton of value to win a national championship. I don't think they can win a national championship. Can they win me a round of 64 game? Sure. Can they win me a round of 32 money line bet outright? Sure. And there is still profitability to be had in that opening weekend or in the Sweet 16 from the individual game perspective, valuing teams that you have seen all year long versus what their overall path is to win an NCAA tournament. So that's why the 2 line looks attractive for Arizona. But when it comes to the individual game matchup and what it might project to be out and look like, that's where I think you find value on a team that you are higher on than what their seed line might actually say about them.
Yeah, I totally agree. You look at a team like Arizona, who have also gone back and forth with most of the year. Just a ton of star players. Wooden Award candidate in Tubelis, Kerr Kriisa, as you just mentioned. Stars all across the floor on that team. But you look at last year. I know it's totally different to compare years, but they're a number 1 seed, and really the first good team that you play out of conference in a while in TCU out of the Big 12 as an 8 or a 9 seed should have won that game, gave Arizona a dogfight. Then they lost to Houston.
Didn't Matherin hit the crazy 3 to tie
TCU,
it, right?
Crazy game.
TCU should have won that game. Then you go and you lose to Houston before the Elite Eight even starts, which is why I'm very iffy. I don't look at those seeds as much as I do as the conference you're coming out of when it comes to UCLA, Arizona, teams like that.
It's also just like, who do you believe in, right? If you've seen Arizona this year, Jack, it's not really a reflection of the Pac-12. Maybe it is, but it's not really a reflection of that. It's knowing that this team, if they were to match up against a team you have watched more and that you value more in that individual game, they are going to be in a very tough matchup. And you can see that reflected in the spread. Maybe in a normal 2-7, the line should be 7.5 in favor of the 2 seed. But this 2-7 matchup for a team like Arizona or a Tennessee team potentially is going to be 3.5. That should tell you a lot based on what you need to know. Last year, the team with Benedict Mathurin and Christian Koloko, it seemed like they were built to make a deep run as a 1 seed. A fantastic guard, a dominant big man. You had Azuolas Tubelis really functioning as that other big man in the way that Kerr Kriisa was distributing the basketball, and he struggled. And then this year I thought, okay, Kerr Kriisa's back. Azuolas Tubelis is back. He's going to be a Pac-12 first-teamer, no doubt about it. Yes, they have to replace Benedict Mathurin, but Courtney Ramey, the transfer from Texas, came in. I was like, Tommy Lloyd is restocking. Arizona was probably a team that I looked at their price preseason to win a national championship and said, yeah, that's going to be an area I look at. Now, probably not. And I might look for those individual game matchups, not necessarily picking on Arizona, but just those spots where the individual game matchup, knowing it's going to only be a 3.5, 4.5 point spread when the line for a 2-7 is generally 7.5 or 8.5. That is where you can find the profitability, and that's where you can fade teams that you think get too much credit for their resume overall and have too high of a seed line.
Yeah, great stuff. I think it's different. It's a different view than a lot of people might have, where they just kind of automatically throw the 1s and 2s straight into the Sweet 16. Sure. Ben, thanks so much for joining us. You spent so much time. We didn't expect we'd get you for this long. So thank you very much.
Well, I think we need to ask him one more question.
Well, yeah. We did want to ask you, Jack, as a sports bettor, it seems like within Sports Grid, there's very strong opinions. It's kind of like half the people think he's very good and half the people think he's very bad. Who was it that we saw? We saw Ranieri blast him on national radio a couple times.
Big time.
Oh, so, yeah. He's the number one hate.
So where do you come down on Jack Weinberger as a gambler?
I actually think.
Oh, boy.
I don't know about Jack's process. I know he does care, and I know he does love sports, and I know he watches a lot and actually does prep and research. I've seen him do that. I think that Jack is a very good sports bettor. I do not like when Jack will be talking about something, and if Jack is on the opposite side of me, maybe it's just a jinx, or maybe it's because I actually deep down believe in his ability to handicap. I don't like when he mentions something the other way. I don't like it. When I see it either on the Paul Farrington show, when he texts me randomly about some lock that he has, I don't like if I see things differently. I'll just put it like that. Maybe I think he's a hex or a cooler, and it's not like, oh, man, the better handicapper got me this time. But for whatever reason, I don't like when Jack is on the other side. I'm not nearly as much of a hater as Joe Ranieri. He actually thinks Jack is full of crap. I actually think Jack does do his prep and knows his stuff to certainly a solid degree. So I think he probably shades more on the good side. And again, if Jack texts me Oklahoma State plus 6.5 and I'm on Kansas State minus 6.5, I don't feel good about the bet I've just placed.
I think you'll take that. That's a very nice compliment.
We need that clip to go to Ranieri. We need that clip to go to Ranieri.
Immediately. Well,
aren't you going to see Ranieri in Fort Lauderdale this weekend?
Oh, we got to hit him up.
We were supposed to see him last time. We went 5 months ago and we were supposed to see him, but we never got to.
This time we'll see him. We'll see him this time. We'll see him this time for sure.
Ask Ben. Ben, do you like the NBA at all?
I do like the NBA, Zach. Yes.
How do you feel about Jokic over 12.5 tonight?
Rebounds.
Rebounds, 12.5. He's at 4 right now.
Zach's been spiraling with NBA bets, if you can't tell.
I just have to hit this one. This is all I have to hit. I've hit Damian Lillard under tonight. I've hit Maxey over. I hit Trae Young over. It's just Jokic tonight. He's at 4. It's 4 minutes left in the second. How you feel about that? 12.5.
Ooh, he's at a bad pace. If there's only 4 minutes, unless he rattles off 3 here before the break.
And that's on pace for 9.
Zach, it's not. I think a lot of the value on Nikola Jokic is starting to be taken away, right? Because he is a walking triple-double, but now they have made the triple-double prop for him to record it minus money, which is just a ridiculous expectation, but that's what it is. And then you see nights where he has a triple-double, like I think it was Friday night, and whoever they played in that game on Friday where he had 14, 11, and 10. Incredible feat to go across the board and post a triple-double, but he went over 0 of his props, except maybe his assist prop that was 9.5 and heavily juiced to the over. So I wish you the best, my man. I think it's almost at the point where the value has been zapped from Nikola Jokic's props, where I wouldn't fade him and take unders by any means, but I'm not sure I would continue to bet the overs on him.
It's long shot Zack over here.
It's long shot Zack. Hey. He lives for Pirates down 5-0 in the third inning.
I did win 1,500 on Boston last year.
But thanks again, Ben. And just remember, for everyone listening, you can catch Ben in the morning, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to noon Eastern Time, Sirius Radio, Channel 159, Sports Grid Network. Ben Stevens, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That was great.
A ton of fun.
Awesome. Well, that was Ben Stevens. Again, check him out on the Morning After radio show, Sports Grid Network. That's where Jack used to work. It was a very knowledgeable interview. I feel like right there for anyone who's getting ready for the tournament.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed hearing the different ways that you could look at the bracket, as opposed to just saying like, okay, this is my team. I'm going to run with
them.
them.
Here's a 2 seed. Let's advance them. But Ben knows his stuff. Working with him for the last 2 years. If you take this advice here on the NCAA tournament, he does know his stuff for sure.
I'm just looking at here before we started, before Ben came on, we were walking around, setting everything up, and I'm looking at all the odds here, and there's still just no one jumping out at me. I kind of like Baylor, but I think the approach is wait for the conference tournaments, look at the path, and then pick someone in the moment right now.
Just hop on board with palm trees, alcohol,
I was going to tell Ben, you always seem to, every single year, you find the one team who's hidden in the group of plus 3,000s to plus 5,000s that I see, and I go, wow, that's a great bet. Every single year. I haven't jumped on with you yet, but when I look at all these teams, Miami's definitely the best bet, I think.
The thing is, though, every year, and including this year before I cash it out, I've waited until before the conference tournaments have started. And then I realized, like, you know what? If you go and win a conference championship and you fall on that 3 line, a bit of an easier path for the most part, and the odds really won't change that much. Like, if I can get Miami as a 3 seed at plus 5K instead of as a 5 seed at plus 6K, 5K is a better bet, in my opinion. So I'm waiting. I think that's my team as of right now. But again, if they show up in the quarterfinals and Syracuse beats them, or the semis and Duke beats them by 20, I'm a little scared off.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll have at least one more March Madness show, probably right after Selection Sunday. We'll be recording on Monday. Again, Jack and I are flying out to Florida on Wednesday. Hopefully we can have one more show recorded this week. We got a lot of football news to break down. Derek Carr, Geno Smith, Bryce Young's measured, Anthony Richardson's jumping all over the place. There's a lot to talk about in the NFL that we'll get back to, but for sure we'll hit some more March Madness. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoy the show, recommend it to a friend. All of the above, just make sure that you keep hitting that subscribe button. And we'll be back hopefully later this week. If not, we'll see you next Monday. Thanks again for listening.